Hello. Thank you all for joining us today at the NTT R&D Forum Technical Seminar. We truly appreciate your attendance. I'm Ishii from NTT Human Informatics Laboratories in the Digital Twin Computing Research Center. As for my specialty, when we communicate, we use gestures, expressions, language, voice, various modalities to communicate. I'm interested in understanding what mechanisms enable successful communication through modeling and how AI can facilitate human communication even further. How can we enhance human communication abilities? These questions guide my AI research and development. Now, in this session, our theme is Physics of Intelligence, exploring the principles of the emergence of intelligence. We'll have two 20-minute presentations, followed by a panel discussion. Let me introduce today's two speakers. Please come in. I'll introduce them now. Our first speaker is Mr. Hidenori Tanaka, research scientist at NTT Research Inc. Mr. Tanaka is pioneering a new field called the Physics of Intelligence, seeking a unified understanding of AI and brain mechanisms from a physics perspective. He's been extraordinarily active in this field. Our second speaker is Mr. Tomoyasu Horikawa, distinguished researcher at the NTT Communication Science Laboratories. Mr. Horikawa specializes in the fusion of computational models inspired by the brain and brain information analysis. Now, let's begin with Mr. Tanaka, who will make a presentation on the physics of intelligence. Mr. Tanaka, the floor is yours.
Thank you all for being here today. I'm based at NTT Research in Sunnyvale, Silicon Valley, where I lead the physics of AI group. Our group focuses on just that, the physics of AI. As I'll discuss shortly, our group is currently collaborating closely with Harvard University. Today, I'd like to talk about AI not just as an engineering subject, but as a way to understand minds, both human minds and AI minds. We're treating this as a field that extends into philosophy. We've been pioneering this work for the past 5 to 6 years. First, let me tell you about my background. 10 years ago, I graduated from Kyoto University's Faculty of Science and Physics. I moved to the US and have been researching there ever since. Initially, I went to Harvard University in the field of physics. Then I pivoted straight into the AI field. I joined Stanford University's diffusion model research. AI diffusion models were invented by physicists. I researched in Professor Sudhir Ganguly's lab, who invented it. At that time, through a fortunate connection, I got involved in the launch of NTT Research, newly established in Silicon Valley. Since then, I've been conducting research there. You might wonder why I, as a physicist, got involved in AI. The reason is this. When you look back at the history of physics and philosophy, going all the way back to Aristotle, questions like, what is the mind? What is our existence? Where does the universe come from? These questions, each time their subjects became observable, transformed into physics, and more broadly, natural science. The most famous example is shown on the left side of this slide, Galileo. His question was, is Earth at the center of the universe? Or is it orbiting the sun? To answer this, Galileo used lenses, which were cutting-edge engineering at the time. That's how he observed planetary motion. There were other players involved like Kepler, and through experimental observation, these pioneers gave birth to heliocentrism from geocentrism. So, what is the mind? My seat is in Harvard's psychology department inside the Center for Brain Science. What is the mind? What is the brain? Until now, with small organisms like C. elegans, we could see all the neurons and observe all their activities. However, flies and mice don't have the same intelligence as humans. Conversely, when we try to study human-like intelligence, it's quite difficult to open up the entire brain. So there's been a trade-off between how intelligent a subject is and how much we can mathematically observe what's inside. But AI completely overturns all of this. Today, AI is even producing mathematical proofs that astound mathematicians, and we can observe it all. It's a dreamlike system that opens a window into the physics of intelligence. That's why I made the switch. This kind of paradigm shift has actually happened many times in the history of physics. The most famous is the first industrial revolution. Looking at the timeline, the early steam engine succeeded in 1712. 50 years later, the first industrial revolution's ChatGPT moment, Watt's steam engine, was created. And then, another half-century from there, after the steam engine was properly commercialized, another century passed before we understood its principles. This pattern, of course, goes from engines to semiconductor engineering. And the liquid crystals in the LCDs you're looking at? Soft matter physics. And I've always believed that AI is the next frontier. In fact, last year, the Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded for AI research, which made big headlines. Professor Hopfield actually is like my academic grandfather, my advisor's advisor. Just last week at Princeton University, I attended a celebration workshop in his honor. The recognition that this is a field of physics is gradually growing. I've been talking not just about physics, but philosophy and thought as well. Having spent the last 10 years in America, what I felt is AI isn't just about engineering and technology. It's about how AI will transform society, a theme with much broader implications. When you listen to these debates about how AI will change society, the West and the East have fundamentally different views on what the world is, what society is. There are different core values. For example, in monotheistic value systems like Christianity, there's God, and then there are humans. Within that framework, we often talk about alignment. God created humans, and now humans are facing AI, and we must align AI. In other words, we must align AI's values with human values, align these vectors together. In a sense, it's been a binary oppositional value system. But in Japan, with Doraemon or Astro Boy, AI and robots are portrayed more symbiotically. In that context, AI is always seen as potentially having a mind of its own. It's not a question of which view is right or wrong. Rather, our fundamental philosophy about the nature of the world profoundly influences the discussion of technology. And that's especially true for AI. If we only oppose AI and try to control it, then as long as control engineering works, that's fine. But if we want to build a deeper relationship with AI and achieve harmony, we first need to understand AI, and to understand that relationship, we also need to understand the human mind in relation to AI. In this way, a new field, the study of the relationship between AI and humans, will emerge. So this isn't just about deepening our understanding of AI. This new field of AI and humans, these are new fields of psychology and psychiatry. Based on this motivation, we're working in America not just to launch our own research group, but to actually enter the Harvard campus, the center of academia, and help establish this new academic field, with NTT playing a major driving role. That's what we've been aiming to do. In fact, our group includes not just AI, but also mathematics, physics, psychology, and neuroscience. Students from many fields who, backed by NTT's industrial capabilities, come together across departmental boundaries. That kind of place already exists. I'm very proud to say that my first colleague is now a professor at Princeton University and is establishing this new field of AI physics within American academia as a partner in this shared mission. We're not just working on our own, we're building a broader network. That's our commitment. Now, when we talk about physics, let me explain why physics specifically. AI has one key characteristic. What we all call AI today is fundamentally deep learning. Deep learning doesn't involve humans writing out every algorithm or giving AI instructions one by one. Instead, we use neural networks modeled after the human brain, large collections of neurons that learn. So when we create AI, rather than writing detailed instructions, it's more accurate to say we're raising it. For example, the further left you go, the smaller the model, and the further right, the larger the model. The prompt is a photo of an astronaut riding a horse in the forest. When you give it this prompt, as you can see, small models produce a jumbled mess where the astronaut and horse blur together, not well rendered at all. As the model grows, it gets a bit better. At around 3 billion parameters, the astronaut perches on top of the horse. This shows the AI understands the concept of an astronaut and understands the concept of a horse, but hasn't grasped straddling yet. Finally, when you scale the model up even more, it properly straddles. The same pattern emerges even with ridiculous prompts like, draw a map of America using sushi. With small models, it's a complete mess. You can't tell what's being depicted. But as it scales up, it beautifully renders America in sushi rolls. When we frame this more scientifically as a research question, for example, if you ask for a blue square apple, the smallest model produces a yellow round apple. Why yellow? Because we also asked for yellow leaves, and that yellow color bleeds through. But as we gradually increase the model size, next it understands the concept of color and can draw a blue round apple. Make it even bigger, and it can draw a blue square apple. These experiments are exactly what developmental psychologists have done with babies, studying concepts like color, shape, and size, in what order and through what mechanisms human babies learn. There's a strong parallel here, and these questions can now be explored by studying AI learning with rigorous, quantitative mathematical precision. That's what makes this exciting. Now, AI keeps getting smarter, but the underlying mechanisms aren't well understood. What we do know, as a simple rule of thumb, increase the model size, the number of parameters, the amount of data, and the computational power, and suddenly, conceptual understanding emerges. That's all we know. When we see these phenomena in large deep learning models like ChatGPT, the next question for us physicists is, how do we turn these observations into rigorous science? We can't just observe these phenomena and stop there. We need to make this a precise science. Why? Does AI truly have creativity? Or is it just regurgitating what it saw in the training data with almost no modification? This is a major debate right now, particularly around copyright. Japan holds a tremendous amount of content, so we need to understand what AI is actually capable of, how much it copies from human creations, and how much genuine creativity it has. We need rigorous understanding. To turn this into a scientific question, we focus on the data. AI training data is this massive mixture of all kinds of content, and I think most people find it fairly opaque. As scientists, we create the data ourselves from scratch. So what have we actually been doing? For example, instead of vaguely asking, can AI generate faces it's never seen? We get precise. We define axes. Is the person smiling or not? Is the hair blonde or black? Is the gender male or female? We create these axes first. Now we have 3 binary axes, giving us 8 total combinations. But in principle, if we show the AI only 4 combinations, it should be able to extrapolate the remaining 4. So we manually built datasets to test this, datasets with exactly 4 of the 8 combinations, and then trained an AI from scratch. We observed how far the AI could generalize. In this work, we did this with human faces, and also geometric attributes like color, shape, and size. For the first time, we rigorously and scientifically demonstrated that AI possesses creativity. We published this paper about 4 years ago. Furthermore, once we understood that AI can extract conceptual elements and recombine them in novel ways, that it has creativity, we wanted to develop this into mathematical theory. We defined creativity as distance within this cube, the distance from points the AI has seen before to novel combinations of concepts it's now outputting. We defined conceptual distance, creative distance, and developed it into a more rigorous theoretical science. I won't go into detail in this talk, but ultimately, as physicists simplify complex phenomena step by step, we distilled it down to rigorous mathematical theory. What we found was, when AI demonstrates creativity by combining n concepts, its ability drops n-1 times along the way. An easy analogy I often use is ping pong and tennis. If someone who's never played either sport practices ping pong intensely, at first they'll improve at racket sports in general, so they'll also get better at tennis. But too much ping pong and their tennis skills actually get worse. That's because they start swinging horizontally instead of vertically. This is skill interference. We found N-1 of these intermediate ability barriers. We then wanted to take this and turn it into an algorithm. Here's what we discovered. Without ever showing the AI a woman wearing a hat, when we deploy it and ask it to generate a woman wearing a hat, what happens? It fails to generate it properly, because the AI has literally never seen that combination. However, inside the AI's mind, various concepts are stored as vectors, stored as arrows, and we can push it in the direction of hat. So it's not that the AI completely lacks this ability. If we manipulate things inside the AI's internal representation, it can generate a woman wearing a hat, something it's never seen. We also tested this with Stable Diffusion, the largest open-source image generation model. If you ask it to generate a triangular credit card, it initially fails. But using our concept direction method, where we identify the direction in the AI's latent space and push it that way, the algorithm successfully produces triangular credit cards. This had significant impact in engineering as well, but what we discovered goes beyond intuition. Our key finding: AI has far more hidden capabilities than we realize. To unlock these capabilities, people use prompting, giving AI smart instructions or carefully wording their commands. Everyone's experimenting with different approaches, but there's still enormous untapped potential left to unlock. At the same time, we're also working in neuroscience, collaborating with groups at Stanford University. We've created digital twins of mouse brains, and using light, we can externally modify the actual firing patterns in the brain to draw out hidden capabilities in mice. We're doing this by considering AI and brain simultaneously. Finally, I'd like to introduce one more major theme. We're now using AI to better understand humans. In Go, Shogi, drug discovery, humans are learning from AI. Scientists and top Go players learning from AI has become completely normal. So what if we also learned about humans from AI? That's the next question we asked. We'll probably use AI to solve scientific problems, engineering challenges, and social issues. Everyone will use AI to advance the external world, to evolve the external world. But as society changes rapidly, we also need to develop ourselves. Our internal world needs to evolve too. Otherwise, we'll face many difficult challenges. In the title of this talk, I mentioned that AI is actually a mirror of the human mind. And even though we call it artificial intelligence, at this point it's something humans created. It's an entity that imitates images and language data produced by humans. So why does AI know what it knows? It didn't discover the theory of relativity from scratch. AI learned by imitating human discoveries. In that sense, AI is still not completely an alien outside of humanity, but rather an entity that works hard to imitate humans. Until now, psychological research had to use humans as test subjects, but AI, in a sense, is talking with more people for longer periods than anyone else in the world. So if we want to understand humans, maybe we should ask the entity that is always talking with humans, not an actual human, but AI. Why not look inside an AI's mind? So in this diagram on the left, there's a hypothesis that human emotions form a hierarchical structure in a circular pattern. At the center are the most basic emotions like sadness and joy, and as you move outward, the emotions become more nuanced. The algorithm we develop takes the vectors representing concepts inside AI's mind, and when we mathematically extract all emotions and situations and apply the algorithm, we find that the larger AI's brain becomes, the more AI already knows and expresses the nuanced hierarchical structure of human emotions. Furthermore, although not all examples are shown on this slide, AI even captures cultural and gender biases. For example, Japanese people express the emotion of shame with particular frequency in AI's representation, showing that AI captures these cultural biases as well. Over the past year, one of our main focuses has been psychiatry. Despite calling ourselves physics AI, we've developed a strong interest in mental health. Mai Uchida, associate professor and director of Harvard's Pediatric Depression Center, has joined our research group part-time, and we're working together closely. When we talk about controlling AI, trying to control AI separately from humans is an outdated paradigm. Right now, with ChatGPT and similar systems, children are interacting with various AI and being significantly influenced. There have even been tragic cases reported on the news of children taking their own lives. In this context, it's critical to define the human-AI relationship. For example, what does kindness truly mean? This is absolutely crucial. If we build AI without careful thought, it just says whatever feels good in the moment. This is called sycophancy, essentially flattery. The system optimizes for that. If you ask users, "Did you like this response?" and they say yes, optimizing just for that means it only says what pleases users right now. But genuine kindness might be advice that a month later you realize was really good advice. Or maybe a year later. Moreover, genuine kindness isn't just about saying nice things to the user alone. It should also consider the people around that user, ensuring they also benefit. Kindness has both temporal and spatial dimensions. We've proven this mathematically and developed algorithms to define what kindness means. We're approaching this as mathematical science. Over the past 6 months especially, we've been collaborating with Dr. Yusuke Masuda, who provides psychiatric education on YouTube. He has 700,000 subscribers and his channel reaches over 1 million people per month interested in mental health and psychiatric conditions. We've been investigating the current state of AI and mental health care together. Our research shows that 70 to 80% of people are consulting AI about their daily emotions and seeking advice about their personal life challenges. This trend is especially pronounced among children. In this landscape, what are the risks? And what's the right way to seek advice from AI? We've compiled these insights into a book that was published just last week. This is the kind of work we've been pursuing. AI alignment and AI safety have been key concepts, but this isn't about separating humans from AI and trying to restrain it with rope. It's not about control in a narrow sense. Instead, it's about exploring what a healthy, positive relationship between humans and AI looks like. I believe we've entered that phase. Finally, in terms of more concrete safety achievements, as we discussed earlier, concept composition and creativity in diffusion models has been reflected in NIST's international standards, specifically their AI safety policy frameworks. As physicists, our research isn't just about improving AI performance, it's about understanding what's actually happening inside AI. This research extends beyond direct business applications to influence policy and regulation. We've worked hard to ensure it reaches those areas, and we've achieved tangible results in the United States. Let me close with this final slide. What we're considering as our next phase is what we call Physics of Intelligence 2.0. That's our vision. Until now, when we talked about the physics of intelligence, we focused on AI as a network of neurons. Going forward, we'll study networks where human and AI minds intertwine. In other words, the society that's coming. Moreover, what's happening now is that the AI population, though a strange term, will surpass the human population. All kinds of decisions will be made, daily business will be conducted, and perhaps even judicial decisions and policymaking might be halfway handled by AI behind the scenes. This might become normal. We want to think deeply about what that society should look like. This is a philosophical question, a sociological question, but at its core lies engineering. Deploying a chatbot to the market is like deploying a person with their own personality. Strange as that sounds, it has that level of impact. The engineering required for this isn't just about performance metrics or safety benchmarks. We need to collaborate with psychiatric experts to think deeply about defining kindness. We need to put much more effort into these aspects. We started talking about the physics of AI 6 years ago, and now, as our next phase, we're studying the society woven by human and AI minds, developing the physics to deeply understand and guide it. That's what we aim to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tanaka. AI and human creativity, emotions, acting as a mirror reflecting social cognition as well. The idea that humans can come to understand themselves through AI felt a bit science fiction to me at first, but I'm excited about the possibility this could be achieved through AI. That was a truly exciting presentation. Thank you. We're running short on time, but let me ask one quick question. You mentioned phase transitions in the emergence of intelligence. Of course, there's still so much we don't understand, but are there conditions that trigger this phase transition like emergence? I imagine there are parameters at play. Have you found specific parameters to be particularly important, or conversely, are there areas where future research might help us better understand these mechanisms? I think the audience is curious about this too. What do you think?
One finding we've made is that emergence, meaning when AI suddenly understands a specific task or concept, if you plot training time on the horizontal axis, there's a point where understanding suddenly kicks in. We discovered the key to emergence lies in the problem structure itself. Take math problems, for example. To solve them correctly, you must execute a large number of steps accurately. But for a more straightforward task like distinguishing dogs from cats, you don't need nearly as many steps as math problems. The layering of steps requires much less precision. About 3 years ago, emergence suddenly became visible in AI learning curves. Our explanation was that the tasks we give AI exhibit what we call compositionality, the combinatorial nature of concepts. That aspect became stronger. As shown in our theoretical results, let's say we have AI perform agent tasks going forward. Agent tasks might involve 100 steps. Go to this website, open this tab, enter information. As steps increase, even a single misstep can send the task in a completely wrong direction. As time scales and step counts grow, emergence actually arrives more suddenly. What seemed impossible for AI just yesterday, suddenly the pieces click into place and many things become possible. So the pace of AI progress we'll experience may not slow down, it might actually speed up. That's one key insight.
Thank you for the insightful answer. The idea a number of steps and complexity can lead to even more rapid emergence is fascinating. Thank you so much. Once again, that was Mr. Tanaka. Please have a seat. Next, Mr. Horikawa will present. The theme is Exploring Thought Through Brain Activity. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Horikawa from the Human Information Science Laboratory at NTT Communications Science Laboratories. Mr. Tanaka just presented a comprehensive perspective on AI research. My specialty, shown in the brain image on the left, is analyzing brain data like this. By measuring and analyzing human brain activity, we can decode our subjective experiences represented in the brain, images we've seen or imagined, mental information, using decoding technology. This allows us to deepen our understanding of how the human brain works. That's my research. Since I use AI in this technology, I'll be speaking about that connection today. Let me briefly introduce myself. I've been developing brain information decoding technology that reads information from brain activity data. In earlier research, I measured brain activity during sleep and predicted dream content from brain activity alone. More recently, by leveraging AI, I've been visualizing what people see and demonstrating that we could do much, much more. That's what I've been working on. Additionally, I analyze brain activity related to emotions to understand which emotions appear in the brain as specific patterns. But my primary specialty is analyzing brain data to study our subjective experiences, not just what we see externally, but how mental information is generated in our brains and what's being represented at any given moment. Let me explain brain information decoding, the primary technology I use. What is it? When we experience the senses or think, brain activity emerges in response to various external and internal conditions. Information from various stimuli and our thoughts appear in the brain. Studying how this appears in our brain activity, in terms of which brain region becomes active, is called encoding or the encoding approach. In our research, we use functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI, a large scanner that occupies an entire room, to measure human brain activity. We analyze these brain images, treating them as representations of stimuli and thoughts, essentially a code to be deciphered. We then decode that code. That's our research approach to decoding. This means that when given brain data, we can interpret what information it represents from an external perspective. What can we use this technology for? Simply put, by analyzing brain activity patterns, we can decode physical and mental states from the brain. This technology uses brain-decoded information to control machines or robots, or to convert that information directly into words. This is called a brain-machine interface. It can be applied to communication tools. As shown on the right, by analyzing brain activity during sleep, we can test whether dreams can be predicted. This helps us investigate how subjective experiences are represented in the brain. The technology is useful both for science and practical applications. In our recent research from around 8 years ago, we integrated AI into this technology. Instead of directly predicting from brain data, we convert biological brain signals into AI neural network signals, then analyze those. This lets us decode complex information from brain activity alone, far more than ever before. Brain data on its own is just images, difficult to interpret directly. By converting to AI signals and analyzing them, we can link it to web databases, text data, and other resources. This unlocks much richer information from brain activity. What have we actually achieved with this? Let me briefly explain. On the left is zero-shot decoding. With conventional decoding technology, if you wanted to predict what someone is seeing, you had to define it in advance. Which of these options is it? The problem had to be constrained for predictions to work. But by leveraging AI, we can handle new categories not in training. Using only training data of lions, dogs, cars, and faces, we can predict if someone is seeing or imagining a coffee mug, or entirely new categories. That's what we demonstrated initially. Using similar technology, we can now convert brain activity into images. This lets us visualize what someone sees, still images they're viewing or imagining directly from brain activity. These technologies primarily target vision, very simple, small, still images decoded from brain activity. But in our everyday experience, our daily lives, even when watching short videos like the ones shown here, it's not just about identifying a specific object or recognizing dog or cat. We perceive multiple interconnected objects and scenes all at once. We're able to recognize and recall the images when describing them to others. That's what our brain actually does. How is such complex semantic information represented in the brain? How can we capture it? We developed new technology to tackle this. Converting such complex information from brain activity into text has been quite difficult, and research on the related brain mechanisms has been limited. So the technology I'm presenting today uses brain data analysis and AI to convert complex visual information from the brain into text, generating comprehensive descriptions from brain activity alone. The approach we use to solve this is a technology we've named mind captioning. We were finally able to publish this as a paper this month. And at this year's R&D forum, we're showcasing it at our booth. So please stop by if you're interested. What is this technology? Using fMRI, the large-scale brain measurement device I mentioned, we capture fMRI brain signals and convert visual semantic information from the brain into text. It's a decoding technology. There are two steps. First, as shown on the left, we decode semantic information from the brain. We measure brain activity while viewing videos using fMRI, capturing fMRI brain signals. Simultaneously, we have others create text captions for those videos, describing the video content using words. That's the caption creation step. We take those captions and analyze them using a deep language model, a language AI, to extract machine brain signals. These are labeled semantic features on the left. We convert the captions into those. With this paired data, brain activity from various videos and machine brain signals, we can transform human brain signals into machine signals. We create a transformation model, a decoding model. Once we have that, we can take brain signals from entirely new videos, or brain signals from imagining something without seeing it, and convert them into AI model signal features, or decoded features. Using this, we can determine what someone is seeing or imagining. That's the challenge we're solving. The problem is that brain signals are originally image data, which makes them difficult to interpret linguistically. Even after converting brain signals into AI signals, the information is still represented in a form we can't interpret. It's just a series of numbers. How to linguistically interpret this is the most difficult challenge. Ideally, we'd exhaustively list every possible word sequence and identify which one best matches the brain activity. That would be ideal, but there are infinite possibilities, so it's quite difficult. So what I developed instead is an iterative search approach that generates text describing the brain information. The technique I'm using is masked language modeling, another AI language model technology. How does it work? For example, in English, if you have the sequence, "How are you today?" you mask the "you" part. So it becomes, "How are mask today?" We don't know what the mask part is, so we train the model to learn it. We train it to predict which word fits the mask. That's the training. If you understand English reasonably well, you'd know "you" is appropriate, or that wouldn't fit. By using this technology, we can make the search I mentioned much more efficient. In practice, we perform iterative optimization. For example, to describe the video currently being viewed, in reality, we start with nothing, no information at all. But let's say we have candidates like metal shapes or 3-spiral. With these current candidates, we replace words with mask or insert mask between words, creating variations like mask shapes, metal mask shapes, and so on. We generate these new mask candidate sequences. Then, using the masked language model I explained, we predict new words to fill the masked parts. We then compare these new text candidates with the brain activity. We select the text that matches the brain information most closely and repeat this loop over and over. At first, we have no information. The text is meaningless. But gradually, it converges towards what's in the brain. The final result should describe what the brain is seeing or imagining. That's the approach we took. These are actual video frames viewed by experiment participants, and the upper right shows what they watched. You might wonder how to describe it in words. It's challenging. But the text shown below was generated from brain activity while viewing it. Initially, unknown. We start with absolutely no information. In the AI space, we progressively move toward the brain information, and as we get closer, meaningful words gradually begin to emerge. After about 100 iterations, we get text describing what's being viewed. It says a circular and rotating shape is formed with subtly moving sections. Through this iterative optimization, we successfully generated text describing the viewed video. There are many more examples at the booth, but here are examples from other videos. The generated text captures the video content quite well from brain activity alone. We've confirmed that complex semantic information can be extracted from brain activity. To quantitatively evaluate accuracy, we identified videos, but the identifying process is done using text alone to verify accuracy. We take the generated text from brain activity and compare it with reference texts for various videos. We compare the distance to incorrect versus correct video reference texts, verifying that the distance to the correct video is closer. We evaluate this using various metrics. In natural language processing, we're testing various techniques to evaluate text-to-text distance. One method we use is feature correlation. When evaluating distance, the horizontal axis shows candidate videos, indicating how many videos we're choosing from 2 to 100 choices. Even with 100, we averaged around 50%. Since it's 50% with 100 choices, with 100 videos, how often are we correct? Random guessing, 1 in 100, but we achieved 1 in 2, that level of accuracy. What's important is generating complex text that has proper sentence structure, not just a word list. For example, with the same word set, a bird eats a snake, change the order, a snake eats a bird, and it's completely different visual information. Is information about these complex relationships represented in the brain? To verify whether we can correctly identify this from brain activity, we shuffled the generated sentences and examined how much accuracy dropped. We looked at when all words were shuffled versus when only nouns were shuffled. Red shows original performance, blue shows nouns only, and gray shows all words shuffled. Even with a word list, we can identify videos to some extent, so accuracy remains quite high. However, performance drops when compared to using the original sentences, which tells us it's capturing relationships. While we're using one language model here, just as NTT is also developing Tsuzumi, there are various language AI models in the world. So we wanted to know which models produce high accuracy when implementing this technology. We tested nearly 50 different models to verify when accuracy becomes high. The vertical axis shows our technology's accuracy. Higher is better. The horizontal axis shows the similarity between the language AI model and the brain. As this increases, we confirmed that decoding accuracy from brain activity also increases. This means that as we develop and advance language AI models, if we can create models with internal representations closer to the human brain, the accuracy of technologies like this will continue to improve. What we really wanted to do was more than just generate text from viewed videos. That's obvious. You can just look at a video in front of you. That's not very interesting. What we really want is to generate text when visual imagery exists only in someone's mind. That's what we truly want to investigate, the most interesting part. To test this, we had participants view videos beforehand and asked them to remember the videos for later. They entered the MRI scanner, and we asked them to recall specific videos with their eyes closed, measuring brain activity while they thought. We verified whether we could generate text the same way. The results are shown below. Viewing results in the middle and the bottom shows predictions from brain activity during recall. On the right, we show the video identification accuracy for each participant. Performance drops compared to viewing. But interestingly, there's considerable individual variation. Some people are good at it, others struggle. But even for those who do well, picking the right video from 100 choices, achieving 40% accuracy means correct identification about 2 out of 3 times. So we confirmed we can convert imagined content into text from brain activity. Now, if we're generating text from brain activity, wouldn't that be linguistic decoding? You might think we're decoding the words people are thinking, but actually that's not the case. What we're capturing is complex visual semantic information and decoding that information from brain activity. That's what our analysis suggests. As an example, in prior research, participants were shown images of a jester entertaining a king and another of a king entertaining a jester. Patients with global aphasia, damaged language centers of the brain, when shown these images in a plausibility task, can tell which is odd. In other words, a jester entertaining a king is natural, but a king entertaining a jester is odd. That recognition itself is properly preserved. But when asked to match text with pictures, they can't do it at all. However, in their brains, there must be complex visual semantic information sufficient to judge plausibility. So we verified whether our technology is successfully leveraging that. We haven't actually tested aphasia patients, but with healthy participants, we excluded signals from the language network and tested whether we could do the same thing. In both perception and recall conditions, accuracy drops slightly. But we confirmed that we can still generate meaningful, complexly structured text from brain activity. So to quickly summarize, we developed a new technology for analyzing brain data, which we call mind captioning. What this enables is not just generating word lists from brain activity, but capturing structured semantic information that properly represents relationships between elements and verbalizing it as well. Importantly, this applies not just to what people are viewing, but also to what they're imagining. That's why, for example, someone with a damaged language center who can't speak, who can think but can't express with words, this could serve as a communication support tool. That's one potential application we propose. To summarize, we're decoding non-linguistic thought, not words, but visual information. We can decode brain information about non-linguistic thought content and output it as text, opening up future possibilities for brain-to-text systems based on such non-linguistic thought. This technology suggests the possibility of brain-to-text communication. That concludes my research presentation. Thank you to everyone who collaborated. Thank you.
Now we'll move to the panel discussion, but first we need to set up. Mr. Horikawa, thank you for that. That was fascinating. Decoding imagined semantic representations from brain activity. That visual semantic meaning can now be expressed as text using AI. Remarkable research findings. I have a related question. I have a young daughter, and we sleep in the same room every night. Sometimes she cries out in her sleep, saying things like, "That's mean," and I always wonder what she's dreaming about. So the semantic brain representations you showed when people view videos, and the captioning technology that decodes them, I'm wondering if the brain regions active during dreams are different from those active when recalling real videos. If so, it might not work, but if they're similar enough, we could use an EEG to measure brain activity during sleep and caption what someone is dreaming or even reconstruct it as video. Do you think that might be possible?
Thank you. As I showed earlier in my slides, by measuring brain activity during sleep at the word level, we can identify dreams with men in them or driving a car. We've confirmed this to some extent. But this time, we've moved beyond the word level to sentence-level information with complex structures from brain activity and interpreting it as complex text. So if we can properly collect the data, we expect to successfully generate text describing complex dream scenes to some extent.
Thank you. I'd love to try this with my daughter when it becomes available. I think that day will come soon, and I'm very excited. Thank you. Now that we're set up, let's move to the panel discussion. Please have a seat. Once again, our two speakers have shared cutting-edge research using AI and the brain and physics, cross-disciplinary research bridging AI, the brain, and physics. These were fascinating presentations. Building on this, while time is limited, I'd like to move into a deeper discussion. I put a lot of thought into the discussion themes, and both speakers are seeing them for the first time, so I hope they'll respond with a sense of spontaneity. Here's the first theme. Do AI and the brain share emergent principles of intelligence? That's the theme of this discussion, and of course, I can't expect a simple yes answer to such a complex question. But perhaps some insights are emerging on whether they share commonalities. Or, as research on both AI and the brain continues, we might understand their similarities more clearly. Any perspective is welcome. I'd love to hear insights from both of you. Mr. Tanaka, could we start with you?
Thank you. Whether AI or the brain, one perspective I always take is, what is AI made of? Experience, data, what has the AI seen? Language data and image data from the internet, experience. Another is what's called architecture, what it's made of. In AI's case, it's called an artificial neural network. Neurons are mathematically defined inside a computer and connected as a network. The human brain, though wet with cells, is also made of a network of neurons, nerve cells. Finally, there's the learning objective. For language models, they endlessly predict the next word in sentences, repeating that forever. For humans, various objectives can be defined, such as survival and evolution. First, if we ask where common principles, universality in physics terms, might emerge from, one perspective is this. Both we and AI actually share a lot of experience. AI runs on silicon, while our brains are wet biological cells. But the images AI sees, dogs, cats, are the same ones we see. And the text AI reads and produces comes from human writing, human speech. So universality could certainly emerge from that shared experience. For example, whether it's robot eyes or our own eyes, one constraint for functioning in the natural world is you need to read a book equally well in bright sunlight and in a dim bedroom at night. You have to see things consistently. That requires normalization, taking strong signals and normalizing them. AI has normalization layers that regulate signals, and our brains have the same mechanisms. Also, as I mentioned earlier, we're actively comparing psychology with our AI theory right now, looking at tasks that require combining concepts to achieve something. So, yes, those similarities exist.
Thank you. Not across the board, but we're starting to identify specific areas of commonality and using those as a foundation to advance the research. Thank you very much. Mr. Horikawa, could we hear from you next?
Thank you. When it comes to AI and the brain, there are many perspectives. But as for whether current AI systems like ChatGPT share anything in common with the brain, I'm honestly not sure. That's my current impression. But as AI becomes more advanced, I think we could create AI that mimics how the human brain manifests intelligence, that replicates those mechanisms. I believe that's possible. But is that the only solution? I think it would be more interesting if it weren't. Simply put, we humans developed our brains through evolution, which enabled us to do various things. AI, on the other hand, consumes data we've created and manifests something resembling intelligence. It would be fascinating if they were completely different. In that case, what truly makes us human? I think exploring that question would be fascinating. We can make them similar, but we can also choose not to. That's my view.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. We can imitate the brain, we may discover something new through that imitation, and of course, there's no necessity to design it identically. There could be entirely new ways for AI to manifest intelligence. That would be perfectly fine. Thank you both for sharing your insights. I've learned a great deal. Now, let's move on to the second theme. This one is quite direct. New forms of human-AI communication. We've heard such fascinating insights from both of you, the physics of intelligence, AI as a mirror of humanity, and cutting-edge brain signal decoding. The brain can now explain so much, and as these technologies advance, our relationship with AI is rapidly evolving. So what kind of future do you both see? I'm sure our audience is wondering the same thing. What possibilities lie ahead? What kind of future are you working toward? Please share that with us. Mr. Horikawa, let's start with you.
Thank you. My research focuses on extracting information directly from the brain. With this technology, even people with physical disabilities can transmit information directly from the brain, opening up new pathways for communication. But do we really need to extract everything from the brain? The words we speak, our body movements? Not at all. Once we open this pathway from the brain, we can combine it with our bodies, our thinking, and cognitive approaches in effective ways. This lets us fundamentally change how we do things. I believe that will become entirely possible. Take programming, for example. There's been a shift to what's called vibe coding, where instead of typing code manually, you have AI generate it and then check the results yourself. Many people work this way now. Brain information decoding could work in a similar way. When we want to communicate or control something, AI can support the process, changing how we approach tasks and helping us work much more effectively. That's the kind of future I see as possible.
Thank you. Since we can learn so much from brain input, AI can understand that and provide deeper, more meaningful support that truly benefits humans. That's the impression I get. Thank you. Mr. Tanaka, please go ahead.
In my case, when I think about communication, I imagine myself and AI right here, just having a conversation. But what truly excites me is human-AI coevolution. Coevolution means evolving together. Go masters, for example, would study AI moves and think, why this move? It's beyond anything I imagined. Just this past month, mathematics professors were amazed by AI proofs, mathematical proofs they never considered. Now, these are all games in academia. But what if this extends to philosophical insights? AI can already do impressive mathematics, so when we discuss life's meaning or purpose with AI, maybe philosophical insights are already emerging. Now, there are risks, hallucinations, delusions, and I'm working with psychiatrists on both sides of this. But still, the idea of AI and humans evolving together in our inner worlds, this coevolution beyond just communication, that's what excites me most.
Thank you. Yes, exactly. Not just surface interaction, but truly internal, like a kind of inner companion. A future where humans and AI co-create and grow together. It sounds like that might be possible sooner than we think. Thank you both very much. I have so much more I'd like to discuss, but unfortunately, we're out of time. Let's wrap up our panel discussion here. Thank you both so much. That concludes our session. Thank you all for joining us today.